Well, hello, everybody. It is Josh Klein from FreeThinking Ministries, and we are here with a special episode for you. You may have followed FreeThinking Ministries in the last year and noticed that we took some strong positions on political topics, and we also made a commitment to continue the conversation afterwards. This was not just about hoping that President Trump would get elected, but it was about trying to add an evangelical voice to some of the political landscape. And so what we want to do, Trump was just inaugurated yesterday as of the time we're recording this. And so we invited Desert Rose and Wintery Knight. We've had them on the program before. We talked about policy. What was it, like, I don't know, in October maybe last year, something like
Sounds
that.
right.
So thank you for hopping on. We are going to talk about Trump's cabinet pick, his inauguration, stuff like that today. Wintry Knight and Desert Rose, thank you for hopping on with us today.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes. So were either of you able to catch any of the inauguration yesterday? Did you watch any of it?
I did. I saw the actual inauguration, and I watched Trump's speech, and then I heard the prayers right after, the three different men who said a prayer for the country. One of which I think was maybe theologically accurate, but then I kind of checked out. I had a lot of other things to do.
Yeah, it's about the same thing for me. I don't think I've ever actually watched an inauguration all the way through, so it was like, I'm just kind of interested in a little bit of it. So I heard Trump's speech, and then that was about it for me. I did listen to the prayers, and it's just interesting. Public prayer linked to a political ceremony can get performative, and it's just kind of sometimes a little bit icky for me. So anyway, but because of that, we wanted to talk about, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening in the next few weeks. We could talk about policy. We could talk about all the things that are happening. But last time we talked, you mentioned that when we elect somebody, we are electing somebody, not just that person, but all of the people they're going to surround themselves with. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, sounds like a great topic. Yeah, I'm ready to talk about that.
All right. So we got a list of a bunch of names here. We're going to go through them kind of one by one and just see what we have to say. And what we want is for this to be a resource to you out there as you listen. As Christians, we want to call balls and strikes. We don't want to play partisan politics. Now, for me, a lot of my politics are going to fall on one side of the partisan line just because it's more in line with my Christian philosophy. But we're also wanting to call balls and strikes with who Trump is surrounding himself with. We want to be honest and not sycophantic, right? So lots of names to talk about. Let's get into it. The first one I have on here is Attorney General Pamela Bondi. I think she already went through her confirmation hearing, but she hasn't been confirmed. Am I right in that?
Yeah, I don't think she's been confirmed yet.
She did a great job in her confirmation hearings, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So which one of us wants to take that one?
Well, let me start maybe by talking about the predecessor, who's Merrick Garland. Mm-hmm. So this is I think from my perspective, what I'm concerned about is what kind of policies and laws are going to enable me to live an authentic Christian life where I'm not in fear, about what people will do to me about it. And Attorney General, Merrick Garland, you remember, was put forward by President Obama as a middle-of-the-road, Supreme Court justice pick, and he never got a vote. But now we know different. So he attempted to jail Trump over mishandled classified documents. He raided Trump's home, and this is like maybe he's supervising all of this. Raided Trump's home with a deadly force authorization. He tampered with evidence seized from Trump's residence. He covered up Biden's mishandling of classified documents. So they got different treatment. And this is not what I'm looking for from an attorney general. He himself ignored a subpoena, but he imprisoned Trump officials who did the same thing. And then this is the part that really bugs me. He was Attorney General and supervising federal law enforcement efforts to prosecute peaceful pro-life protesters, including with pre-dawn raids, with SWAT team style raids where there are children in the house and automatic weapons are being brandished and pointed around the home. I think, again, the inconsistency between how he treated those pro-life protesters versus how he treats people who are on the other side who do violence, it's a big double standard. And so if you guys remember, there was a big struggle in the Loudoun County Public School Board with concerned parents who had been affected by the allowing boys and girls bathrooms laws. So that girl actually got sexually assaulted by a guy, and he made a big scene at a school board meeting. And the Biden administration with Merrick Garland drafted a letter, and the School Board Association, National School Board Association, targeting parents as domestic terrorists. They also targeted Catholics as violent extremists. So this is, I could go on and on about this. I think the way the J6 people were treated compared to the way Antifa is treated, two completely different tiers of justice. How Biden and the Hunter Biden laptop was treated versus how, people like IRS whistleblowers who tried to draw attention to what was going on. The rules are completely different. So, maybe one of you guys wants to answer, is Pam Bondi going to give us a departure from this two-tiered system of justice, which is using government as a weapon against people who hold Christian convictions and conservative convictions? Is she any better?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Pam Bondi. Everything I've seen from her has been excellent. She actually does have experience as a prosecutor for nearly 20 years. She spent 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. And her focus has been on prosecuting violent crime and also the opioid crisis. She's not worried about going after parents who are upset that their daughters were violated. She's not been upset that Catholics pray that people won't take the lives of their unborn children. She's going after actual criminals.
Right.
She has sued drug makers and pharmacies for misrepresenting the drugs, appropriately so. She sued the Obama administration to overturn the health insurance mandate. And she has defended Florida's ban on same-sex marriage. So she is solid. If you saw any of her confirmation hearing, she did a phenomenal job. She is well-spoken. She is tough. She is a truth teller. And I think this is one of Trump's best picks, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I would add one. I just add one thing to that. I think she's also not somebody who strikes me as a yes man, as a sycophantic yes man. Merrick Garland was that. I mean, that's if he was anything, he was. I will do your bidding. And so now, who knows how that rubs with Trump? Sometimes he gets frustrated with people who aren't his yes men. I get that, but the fact that he chose her out of Florida. Anybody that comes with the recommendation of Ron DeSantis, policy-wise, is good with me. So
absolutely,
I would agree.
I think I'm a big DeSantis fan. I'm wearing my DeSantis hoodie right now. Next time,
love it, love it.
There you go. Yeah, because DeSantis, he's a little mechanical in his speech and stuff, but he is, without a doubt, in my opinion, one of the best administrators in the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to see a President DeSantis one day.
Yes. From your lips to God's ears. That would be great. So we're all in agreement that Pam Bondi, hopefully she gets confirmed. I think she will. Let's do that with each of them too. What is the likelihood that you think they get confirmed after we kind of talk through them? What do you guys think for Pam?
Definitely very likely to be confirmed. And I would give this pick an A+.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and this also highlights the importance of not only paying attention to the presidential nominee, pay attention to your Senate and your congressional nominees. Get them in office because that's the only way she gets through.
Yeah,
right?
that's a great point.
Is that there's a majority. Otherwise, he would have had to pick somebody that would have been more middle of the line. You have to play politics as president with your picks sometimes. But having a majority in both gave him the ability to pick who he wanted in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
All right, let's get to the Secretary of the Treasury. That's Scott Bessent. Now let's talk about who was there before. Janet Yellen was there before, and in my opinion, Janet Yellen was incompetent, as incompetent could be with Treasury information. Just look at some of the. I can't go back to it all, but look at some of the conversations she would have. She called inflation transitory when it obviously wasn't going to be. She kind of poo-pooed the rate hikes, and advised that they would not be necessary, and continuously forwarded this idea that there would be a soft landing even without rate hikes from the Fed. And so and the other part of what she did was she instantiated or put in place DEI initiatives promoting racial consciousness in the Treasury's decision making.
Wow.
Now, whatever that means, it can't be good, in my opinion. What in the world does that have to do with trying to make sure that our dollar stays strong? And of course, you can just look at our GDP growth. You can look at the strength of the dollar over the 4 years. And I think abject failure, in my opinion, would outline Janet Yellen's tenure as the Treasury Secretary. I talked a lot there. Do either of you guys have anything to say on?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fun to talk to you, Josh, because you know so much about these things. For me, the perspective I have on Janet Yellen is she, the drivers of inflation for me were the energy restrictions and regulations, cutting off the plans to build the Keystone XL pipeline, which raises the cost of electricity, which means that everything that needs to be shipped or everything that needs to be developed under fluorescent lights is going to cost more. So that's one driver of inflation. And then, of course, the other one is the massive increases in spending. A lot of that spending on things like, bailing out people for student loans and lots of things that were really questionable. So
Saving the planet, right?
Yes.
From 2 degrees of warmth.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can't, if you're the Treasury Secretary, and you can't understand that the drivers, what's driving the inflation upward, is still in place, and you need interest rates or cut spending to address that, then you're not doing a good job. That was her whole job.
Yep.
Yeah. I think anytime DEI is somebody's priority, that is all really I need to hear right there. They're not a serious person. They're not serious about their job. If if someone is noticing that people of a certain ethnicity or skin color are not being given opportunities to go, to pursue a certain education or degree, or they're being discriminated against because of those, then yeah, sure, address that. But to say, we're just going to go out and find diversity of skin colors and, exclude all conservatives, which is what, inclusion means, right? And things like this. It's not, you're not a serious person. You're not serious about your job. And we need someone who's serious for Treasury. I think Scott Bessent is a very serious person. He is pro free market. I think his approach to investment and economic growth does align with the current administration, the new administration's goals of stimulating the economy, creating jobs, and that sort of thing. So I think this is a very good pick as well.
Yeah. One of the things I would say about Scott Bessent is he is actually he is somebody that you can hold up as somebody who will not let their social positions impact what their job is going to be, unlike Janet Yellen. I would put Scott Bessent probably under a socially liberal, socially left
Definitely.
If he was going to be in charge of social policy, I wouldn't like this at all. He's pro gay marriage. He's pro all these things, but he's a supply side economics guy, and he understands what it takes to get an economy going, and he's going to focus on that, and he's not going to let social policy. He is laser focused on doing the job that the Treasury Secretary is called to do. When you start to implement all the things like DEI and social policy within it, you just bloat a cabinet position, and you can't actually be efficient at what you're going to do. So some of the things I like about him, again, supply side guy, in his hearing, he said, we don't have a revenue problem in the United States. We have a spending problem.
That was a great and accurate quote. Yep.
And it's an actually accurate quote. Now, whether or not we're going to do anything about that, I kind of don't believe we will do as much about it as we could, because really you got to touch entitlement programs if you're going to touch any of the spending, because we increase by 17 trillion every year, and we spend 17 trillion on those Medicare, Medicaid, those entitlement programs. And that's not necessarily something that he's going to be able to control. That's going to have to come from Congress. But the other things that he can't control, I like his 3-3-3 plan, which is cutting the deficit to 3% of GDP by 2028. Kind of a modest goal, but at least it's a goal. Like let's get a handle on this, and then a GDP growth of 3% through deregulation. Which is the big part, because GDP is easy to manipulate. The more a government spends, the more you can claim that your GDP is growing. But what it's actually doing is going to shrink in the long term, because you're just creating money. You're just like Janet Yellen did, I think, contributing to that inflationary spiral. So GDP growth through deregulation means it's natural private market GDP growth. It's not public right. GDP growth.
So important.
Yes. And then the other three is producing additional 3 million barrels of oil every single day, which has an economic impact. If we can produce more oil, we can sell oil, and we don't have to buy as much oil, which means we can actually generate revenue that way. So I like all that. I think he likes using tariffs as negotiating tools, which fits right in with what Trump wants to do. I'm not a huge tariffs guy, but I get Trump's position on tariffs, in my opinion, is we have the best economy in the world. We can take a little bit of a hit. You can't afford it. So if you don't want tariffs, then you have to play our ball game. That's the way I see him using tariffs, and that's kind of the way Besant does as well. So I talked a lot with that one, but is there anything you guys would like to add to the Besant? And let's give it a grade and how likely you think he is to get through.
Well, I'll just add to that this is tangentially related, but it was certainly a disappointment to me when Trump made it very clear early on when he was running that he would absolutely not touch any of the entitlement programs. These are set to become, they cannot continue at this rate. Yeah. So either taxes are going to have to go up, or benefits are going to have to go down, or something.
Retirement age.
Yeah, retirement age, exactly, will have to be raised. Things will have to happen. And the longer we wait, the more drastic I think things will have to be. So basically, it's like a game of hot potato. I think, whoever is president when the money runs out, or whatever administration is in when the money runs out, well, you lose. It needs to be dealt with. And I think it could be, if it was just communicated clearly and well. Trump has the ability to do some things and make it very clear that we're not going to harm you. Maybe, for example, give people the option to keep their money for savings and invest it themselves, instead of the government forcibly taking our money from us that we've earned, in order to waste it and then count on the next generation and the next generation to somehow earn enough money to to pay for my retirement or your retirement. That's just messed up. If you just gave people the choice, I don't have the choice. If I had the choice, I could make a lot more money off of my investments than the government is making. And so, and you could obviously sell choice as a good thing. And
Especially
I think
for
some
young
people.
people.
Exactly. But anyway, that's kind of
That's a great aside. I've said a lot of times, if people would have just listened to Milton Friedman, a lot of things would be better.
Exactly.
And George Bush wanted to basically privatize Social Security in the early 2000s, make it a stock market option, which would, if you look back now, people didn't want to do that. If we would have done that,
that's crazy.
This wouldn't be an issue.
Exactly. We would have so much more money.
So let me answer your question about is he going to get through? I think he's going to get through. And I think as far as a grade, I think it's hard to say right now. I'm going to say exactly for the reasons you stated, being skeptical about how much he can do, probably give him a B. He wouldn't have been my pick. I might have gone for somebody like Stephen Moore, the Heritage Foundation economist. So they can do stuff. They can if they can get a couple of government departments abolished, like education and maybe energy, the EPA, IRS, if they simplify taxes, then they can cut spending. If they want to say, oh, we're going back to the pre-COVID budget, they can cut spending. There's options on the table. I would do it, but I'm not in that position. So we have to see how far he's really going to take this. Is this going to be, an aggressive cost cutter like Argentina's Milei, who just comes in with a chainsaw and gets rid of a third of the federal departments in Argentina? So that would be good. Yeah, he's awesome. And he's talking to Trump a lot,
I love it.
I'd say it's too early to say, maybe B-.
Yeah, I think he'll get confirmed. I guess I don't really have a grade for him.
Yeah. I think I would probably give it a B or a B plus just because of what I think he could get through as far as confirmation goes, with the possibility of an A or a C, depending on how he does things in the near future. So I think the grade can fluctuate. Obviously, with all of these picks, the grade can fluctuate, but I have less confidence in knowing exactly how he's going to accomplish the things he says he wants to than some of the other ones.
Definitely.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to Secretary of the Interior, North Dakota Governor Douglas Burgum, Secretary of the Interior. I like this pick. Anybody want to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. And
right.
I'm in a complaining mood today, so I'm going to complain about his predecessor. Her name is Deb Haaland. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And sometimes when I'm looking up these people to learn about them, I look at their what they did in terms of work and what their education is. So she's a Secretary of the Interior. She was Secretary of the Department of Interior. She has a BA in English and a JD. So nothing related to energy, which I think is a big problem right now. Like you said, Josh, bringing in more barrels of oil is going to stop the inflation. That's what I was talking about before, about one of the drivers. Her experience is administering a Native American gambling business. She's kind of a DEI pick because she is Native American. And she supported, I'm reading this like right off a Daily Signal article I read before to prepare for this. She supports banning oil pipelines, banning fracking, and banning fossil fuel infrastructure. She's just opposed to any kind of made in America energy. So, how could you do worse than this, especially given that inflation is being driven by our inability to produce energy in part? So.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess, picking up from that, Doug Burgum, I think very good pick. 2 terms as governor of North Dakota. He has been very successful in business development. He is, pro-American energy. He has implemented carbon capture for cleaner energy production. So I'm optimistic about this guy, certainly in contrast to Miss Haaland with that BA in English.
He's
He,
actually implemented an all of the above energy strategy in North Dakota. I'm not so
Yeah.
thrilled about the nod to the global warming people with carbon capture, but it looks like he's in favor of more energy production. And to me, I kind of am, if you can do that with nuclear and fracking that are emission free, that's great. But the main thing is that I want inflation to come down, and this guy can do the job. He's definitely passionate about energy development.
Yeah, I have some friends that live in North Dakota, and they were all very happy with him as governor. They loved the job he did up there. And North Dakota's got a lot of oil and a lot of oil-rich options, and the pipeline that goes right through there. So he is pro those things, which is huge. Um, it's weird with confirmation people because you don't know exactly what their position is. Sometimes they give nods to people like the climate people because they're such powerful lobbyists to get people non-confirmed. So I'm trying to figure out if that's all it is if it's politics or if he's really going to fall prey to some of that thinking. I'm not sure. So
I have an idea about that. Let me say
go
something
for
about
it.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
I was going over these notes we made, reading a bunch of different articles to learn about these people with Rose, and I noticed that as governor, he is socially moderate and fiscally conservative, and I thought, oh well, that's not going to come up too much in the Department of Interior job. But the neat thing is that he signed a pro-life bill that was very restrictive and early, and he signed a bill, some kind of LGBT bill that was I forget what the content of it was, but it was in favor of good conservative policy on that. So he says things that are moderate, but then when he's signing legislature, he doesn't veto things that are passed by a good legislature that are more conservative than his positions. So I think yeah, I mean, maybe I would have picked someone different, but he's definitely center right, I would say. So
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with the grade and the. I think he'll get confirmed. And I similar to the to Besant, I'd probably give it a B plus, maybe A minus. Let's go with B plus because of some of the concerns with the. I'm kind of a guy that's like, hey, just go out there and say, guys, China and India are the issues with climate. We have nothing to
yes,
do with it,
right.
and so we're going to do what we want to do. Like, and
Yeah.
we're going to take care of our people. I would rather hear that than
Yeah.
try to,
That's
and then
true.
let the chips fall where they may as far as confirmation goes. But so that's why I would go with a lower grade than an A minus. But
I agree with you. And to that point you just made, energy that's developed in America is always going to be cleaner than
Yep.
energy that's developed in India and China. We have way more restrictions on this, and the people who have to breathe this air and drink this water have way more say in the government.
Yep. And it's much cleaner than Russia. It's really, I mean, I think it's cleaner than probably just about anywhere in the world, right? The energy that we produce here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One guy, oh, go ahead, Desert Rose.
Yeah, I think he'll probably get confirmed, and I don't anticipate anything terrible from him. I think, yeah, probably. I guess I'll go with B plus.
Yeah, me too. So, Josh, along these lines, and I wonder if we can talk about the Secretary of Energy. I
yeah,
don't
let's
know
do
if
that.
you did anything with him. His predecessor is Jennifer Granholm. So she's kind of similar to Deb Haaland. She has a BA in political science and French and a JD. So no experience in energy, in her education or career or in terms of work experience. So they put her in there. And as we were just saying, the Biden admin policies were to block drilling, block pipelines, raise prices, limit supply, drain out the strategic, oil reserve right before, elections. And this funny quote from Jennifer Granholm that I found in the Washington Times. Someone questioned her and said, do you have a plan to increase U.S. oil production? And she says this, quote, that is hilarious. Would that I had a magic wand on this, or had the magic wand on this. So just no idea how to cut, regulations, taxes, complete pipelines, and it just nothing, they're
Mhm.
blocking drilling permits, offshore drilling permits. She just
Hmm.
had just no connection at all to reality. But
Mhm.
the pick that Trump made for Secretary of Energy, I'm giving this guy an A+. I don't know if somebody else wants to talk about him, but he's an A+, and he's gonna sail through, I think,
Yeah, I
confirmation.
mean,
He's
he's
like
got a
an Elon Musk.
bachelor's and master's in engineering, right? One in bachelor's in mechanical engineering
That's right.
and
Yeah.
a master's in electrical engineering from MIT. So not
Yeah.
bad, right? Um, already,
Yeah.
yeah, he opposes energy regulations that supposedly combat global warming. Um, he's a board member with a company that develops advanced nuclear reactors. He um, yeah, he's got quite
Hmm.
the
His name
resume.
is Chris Wright, and
Chris
he's the
Wright.
Yeah.
Yep.
CEO of Liberty Energy. And the thing
Yeah.
is, he says he opposes restrictions that are meant to combat global warming, but nuclear reactors are emission free. And people are really getting back into that. Some of the
Right.
European countries that got out of that, they're saying, oh
Hmm.
no, we love green energy, but you can't do it with wind and solar. So let's try nuclear again. And so this guy is probably going to give us, clean energy by just incentivizing people to develop these safe, brand new, modernized nuclear reactors. And I'm sure he's not against things like fracking and so on that are natural gas that are going to also
Yeah.
be zero emission. So,
Hmm.
an engineer at
Hmm.
Yeah.
Secretary of Energy.
Imagine that. uh,
Yeah,
no, I agree, guys. I love this pick. The
Yeah.
interesting thing I found when I was looking through stuff is he actually drank fracking fluid to demonstrate that it wasn't dangerous in
nice.
2019.
Yeah,
Um, so he's one of the only like big energy guys. I mean, he's as rich as all get out. He doesn't need this job.
right,
Hmm.
right,
He could just live on his own. But he's one of the big energy guys that opposed all of the climate stuff. And like you said, people hear of Chernobyl, so they think, hey, nuclear energy is dangerous and all. And while that's the case, nuclear energy is dangerous if it melts down. The technology is so far above than what it ever was at Chernobyl, and Chernobyl
Hmm.
was such a dereliction of duty for the
Hmm.
people that happened there that it's actually very, very safe.
Yep.
And so, if we can reopen nuclear as an energy option in the United States, that would be huge. Um,
Yep.
so, Chris Wright, 100%, I think A+. I think he'll get through. And part of the reason I think he'll get through is because while I think some people on the left and some of the Congress people will make a little bit of a stink, it's not a big enough position for them to make hay in the headlines, and
right.
so he'll get through. But no,
Hmm.
thanks for moving that because it kind of works hand in hand, which is why I think if him and Doug Burgum can work together well,
Yes.
um, that'd be huge.
Yep.
That'd be huge.
Absolutely.
Anything you have to add to that, Desert Rose, or should we move?
Uh, I'm excited about that one as well. Think he'll get confirmed. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. The next one on the list, I'm just reading from a list here in no particular order. The next one I have on the list is Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez. I don't know how to say her last name. DeRemir. I don't know. Um, Personally, I think we should just get rid of the Secretary of Labor, but
Right.
that's neither here nor there. Do either of you guys have any thoughts on this one?
Rose, you want to go ahead with this one?
Yeah, I mean, so she was in favor of amnesty for illegal immigrants. Not a fan of that. She is in favor of unions and strengthening union efforts to organize in the private sector. I think that unions are largely disastrous.
Yeah.
She wants to expand unions.
Yeah.
She is in favor of banning right to work laws nationally.
Wow.
So I think that this is a disaster.
Yeah, this
I,
is
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, she wants to expand government employee unions. So just think about
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Like there are people who are paid by the government who are going to have every incentive to expand government and raise taxes so that they can get paid more money. So I just think this is an F pick. This is the worst pick that he's made. This one needs to be withdrawn yesterday, and I hope that a whole bunch of Republicans understand her background and vote against her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just add that she is a registered Republican. And I think the reason he picked her was he thought he could get her through because she's a registered Republican. Now, she's a registered Republican in Oregon, though. Oregon. So recognize
why pick someone in Oregon at all? It's not like you're required to have someone from Oregon.
Yeah. And so what I would say, I'd agree. It's an F pick. Now, in my opinion, this cabinet position, Secretary of Labor, whatever, is an F position anyway.
Yeah.
I would rather pick someone who would just close it down,
Yes.
and we could just not have a Secretary of Labor. Labor unions, public sector labor unions are, I won't mince words here, are evil. They are evil.
Yes.
Yep.
And they are a case study in conflict of interest.
Yes.
So whenever she's negotiating with public sector labor unions, it's a conflict of interest because she's going to want to give them whatever they want because she is part of that public sector. So it's they're negotiating against you and me. That's who and we have no say.
Right.
So it's not even like private sector unions, I think, are disastrous and bad. But at least with those, you know which side of the table is negotiating. With this one, it's all, in my opinion, underhanded and awful and gross. And so, I'd say an F pick, but I'm not sure who he would pick here.
Anyone who would close it.
Yeah. that's just, or would say, I won't do anything. Like,
exactly.
I'll just sit in my office and play solitaire.
Exactly.
So he could have picked Kamala Harris. She's good. I'm sorry. That was that was probably too far. Anyway, I think but if she goes, I don't know if she'll get confirmed. I don't know. I'm hoping enough conservatives will sniff it out that she wouldn't. I think all the Dems will go for her, and that should show you.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So speaking of all the Dems going for someone, what do you think about Marco Rubio? Confirmed unanimously yesterday.
I was surprised he was confirmed unanimously. So for those who don't know, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, which is probably one of the most important picks if you're going to do Secretary of State. Now, Marco Rubio has a little bit of a checkered past as far as conservatism with legislation, like he was part of the Gang of Eight bill and stuff like that. But he is very pro-Israel, unapologetically so. So that will strengthen our resolve in that part of the world. And I think he is against the post-war consensus, basically saying that we need to take care of Americans' interests in international policy, which is a departure from the previous administration. So all of that is good. He might be a little bit more interventionist than I'd like in some areas, like promoting democracy and stuff in other countries. I'm fine with promoting democracy. The United States always does this, but we think we can make other countries into the United States. We tried to do it with Iraq, and it was an abject failure because it's an astroturfed redesigning of, and we don't understand that culture. But by and large, one of the things I liked about Marco is he doesn't mince words on China. He doesn't mince words on Hamas. He doesn't mince words on NATO and the UN. And so for that reason, he's going to give us a position of strength. And I'm very surprised he went in unanimously, considering some of those strong positions that he holds. He says putting the core national interests above everything else, I think, is huge. And he made sure to say that is not isolationism. That is just simply good policy. And I 100% agree with that. And he excoriated the ICC. If you people don't know who that is, the International Criminal Court. Yes. He excoriated them, which was awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
And he said his three questions as far as American international policy are: does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? And does it make America more prosperous?
Nice.
And I think that's good. I actually give Marco Rubio the pick. If it was for any sort of like immigration policy, I'd be a little bit concerned because of the Gang of Eight stuff. So I'd probably give it B+ or an A because of that. But other than that, I'm really happy with Marco Rubio in that position. Even though some people see him as kind of old conservative, Bush era conservative, I think he's a little bit more he's a little bit more nuanced than that. So what are your guys' thoughts?
I do think he's gotten a little bolder and better over the last few years. I kind of had equated him for some time as with kind of Bush and moderate positions and almost kind of a rhino. But the last few years, he seems to have been bold on things that are really important to be bold on for this time.
Yeah. For me, he's got a 69% rating from Heritage Foundation. I also have concerns about him for supporting too many interventions, I think, in Libya and Syria. I may be getting those, but he's generally an intervener. And he's also bad on some other issues that I care about, like due process for people who are accused on college campuses of crimes. He's like riding in on his white horse and saying, "Oh no, this is terrible. We don't need to give them due process." So I would say for me, I'm going to give him a 69% or C+. And I just
where I went to school, 69% was an F.
Yeah, me too. So that's that's impressive.
C+ for us.
Yeah.
I'm against the interventionism, make every country a democracy. I think John Adams very much hit the nail on the head that our Constitution, our government, our democracy is adequate for a religious and I would say Christian population, pretty much exclusively. And that where that breaks down, democracy will break down. Where you have Islamic passion, devotion, terrorism, alignment with the Quran and its teachings, you basically have to have a dictator who keeps everybody in line. Otherwise, you will have a complete and total meltdown of society where you have atheism reigning. Basically, I mean, any ideology in which the populace does not largely know that they are responsible to God and know who God is and what He expects. So again, don't go out and kill people because they disagree with you. So as Islam calls for, but rather a Judeo-Christian ethic. I think that democracy is by and large going to fail. I think that's part of why it's important for people who are involved in public policy to push for Judeo-Christian values. And I think that's part of why it's important for evangelical Christians to be involved in public policy. Without it, we'll lose a whole lot. And so I think that's very naive of Marco to think that, we can just go into any country and just give them the right to vote and suddenly they'll be as free and prosperous and wonderful as America.
Yeah. I wonder if the failure in Iraq disabused him of that notion or not. He seems less hawkish in that area than he was before. Otherwise, I would give it a lower grade too, just from some of the things that he said. Exactly. I think that we differ a little bit on the grades here, which is great. I love that we didn't all agree. Otherwise, this would seem kind of like you guys planned. Nope, we're just kind of riffing here. Those things were concerning to me too. I had totally forgotten about the college campus stuff until you mentioned that Wintery night. And I always try to then bifurcate. Okay, where does that fit with the Secretary of State stuff?
Oh yeah, it's not going to matter.
Right.
Yeah. Which is why the immigration policy, the Gang of Eight stuff didn't really weigh much on my mind either. But here's the thing too. I think Trump's number one attribute as a president is his foreign policy.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
He is absolutely great at foreign policy.
Yep.
And I think having Marco Rubio, because if you hear Marco Rubio talk, he's a great talker. Having
That's
Marco
true.
Rubio as as your vessel through which to convey your message to the world. And the Secretary of State is huge for Donald Trump. So if they can see eye to eye on foreign policy, I think this is a great move. So, and I think, and obviously he got confirmed already, so we don't have to.
Right, that's true.
We don't have to decide. Are you guys surprised it was unanimous?
Yes.
I was.
Me too.
Yeah, and a little bit concerned. But
it's funny. That concerns me too. I'm starting to rethink my grade.
Yeah. So
I think people are saving their big guns for other ones that they like a lot less.
Right. Yeah.
Marco probably also knows where a lot of people's skeletons are buried. So
right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I think one of Trump's best picks is Russ Vought for Office of Management and Budget. He held the same role in Trump's first term, and this guy cut 4 regulations for every one new regulation. This guy really has a lot of potential to destroy the deep state with spending cuts. He went to Wheaton College when it was a conservative and legitimately Christian college. He has worked for the Heritage Foundation, who Wintery and I are a huge fan of.
His favorite think tank.
Yep, exactly.
They're great.
He was executive director.
What people say about Project 2025.
I know, right? I think that's so sad. I really think Trump should have taken a different tack with that. I think he should have responded with, okay, well, let's look at what exactly about Project 2025 do you not like? I'm
a Project 2025 stalwart. I say just use that. Just do everything.
Exactly. Just do that. Just do that. Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
Yes, Wintery, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think this guy worked on it because he's a policy guy, okay? This is a policy director. He was executive director and budget director of the Republican Study Committee, which is the conservative group of Republicans, distinct from the Freedom Caucus, which I think the Republican Study Committee is conservative policy. He was also a policy director for the Republican Conference of the U.S. House of Representatives. And in his first term, he has a record of being a cost cutter and a deregulator. And he also has a JD. So we got a huge need here. We've averaged something like 7.6 trillion added to the debt over the last 4 years. It's about 2 trillion a year. So you couldn't pick. I like this guy. He's an outspoken Christian. It's going to get him in trouble in his hearings, but he's really qualified. He's done the job already. So I think it's a great pick.
Yep.
Yeah, I do too. A+ to me. And I think he gets confirmed because he's been. What happened in 4 years that?
Yeah, exactly.
that you all of a sudden he shouldn't be confirmed again. And
exactly
100% in agreement on that. So, Wintery, did you say you thought he'd get confirmed, or did you said?
I'm hopeful. I really like to see him be confirmed. Maybe some people will try to ask him questions about his Christian faith, but all of these picks, your audience may be wondering, why are they so concerned about money? Like, as Christians, I like when my finances are going well, so that when we see one of our recent guests just passed away after he was on our show, Gunter Beckley. So we're trying to see if we can make a donation to the family. We have other friends that are having problems with living in other countries who are struggling. We have a Canadian friend who's struggling. They're struggling with living under Trudeau. So for Christians, it's nice when the money is free to donate, like you're not worried about things because you feel your job is secure and your finances are good. So somebody gets into trouble or they have an opportunity and you say, I want you to go to this university and speak. I want you to enroll in this degree. So when we're talking about things like energy prices and inflation and these kinds of things, the budget, this is affecting us and our attitude towards these things. These things don't happen because we feel like it. It's a question of how well the machine is running. That's how well we're able to project our values and have an influence. So that's why we care about this. And not every Christian thinks like that. That the ones that don't, typically, if you say to them, what's your plan to serve God with your whole life? It's not gonna come out, well defined. I don't know, Josh. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's very pragmatic, and not in a bad sense. Pragmatic in a good sense, um, basic Christian discipleship with your finances, like
Right.
how I can manage it well. But I'll even add a layer onto that with you, in
Hmm.
saying that the less people can be reliant on the government for their livelihood, the better it is for them as people, and we're called to love our neighbors.
Yep.
Hmm.
Um, and so the government is notoriously inefficient at caring for people,
Yep.
and caring well for people, and sometimes so inefficient it borderlines on the negligent or the actually um, uh, the
Cruel.
hostile towards people, cruel
Hmm.
towards people,
Hmm.
Right.
and so we want people to be able to live lives free of government coercion and control. And the more you're reliant on government, the more you're not free of that.
Hmm.
I remember when COVID was first kind of happening, and then the government had their loans that they were giving out to people,
Hmm.
Hmm.
quote unquote loans that you didn't have to pay back, maybe,
Right.
um, if as long as you didn't fire people. And I was on the board at a church at that moment, and the board members were discussing it, and I remember saying, "Hey guys, if we take money from the government, we have now we have now become somebody who has to rely on not just government assistance, but not ticking off the government
Hmm.
to make sure that we're making a living as a church. And I don't want to do that. I would rather end up closing our doors because people aren't giving, which means we haven't been evangelizing. We have like that's a
Hmm.
failure on our part as a church, than having to kowtow to the government because we took money when they were giving it away for quote unquote free. And so, as a board, not because of anything I said necessarily, but because of that discussion, we chose not to go forward to government assistance, even though it could have helped the bottom line, right? And so,
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's to piggyback on your point, Wintery. I think that's why we're so concerned about people's finances in that regard as well. So,
Hmm.
to kind of bolsters the point you're making.
Yeah, that's a great additional point. It's not a coincidence that Hillsdale College is one of the very few remaining liberal arts colleges in the United States that has not uh, given in to what is contrary to their founding values and to
Hmm.
what they know is right and good for people and loving toward people. They continue to be a bastion of truth and discipleship
Hmm.
because they don't take money from the government, so they don't care what the government says about them. So as
Yeah.
long as the government's not going around just straight up closing down anybody and everybody,
Hmm.
they have freedom to teach truth.
100%. So, and that's why when we talk about these people, it's not just, again, like I tried to say at the beginning, it's not just, hey, we wish they were more quote unquote Republican. It's actually these values reflect the values that we find in Scripture:
Yep.
freedom, liberty, the ability to choose what you're going to do with your money, to be able to be a cheerful giver. Uh,
Yes.
um, all of
Definitely.
yeah, all of those values are biblically based, and so that's why when we say, hey, the Department of Labor, we'd rather that go away, it's not just because I vote primarily for Republicans. It's because I see the Department of Labor as an antithesis to the freedom that God calls us to in the social sphere.
Yep.
So,
Yep, exactly.
so that was a lot of words, but
No, it's great. It's great. I think there are two people I'd love for us to mention.
yeah, let's go.
Cash
Yes.
Patel for FBI director, and then Jay Bhattacharya. Cash Patel, I think this is an excellent pick. Um, Actually, Wintry, you want to say a few things about who
Oh,
he's
yes.
replacing since
Yes, I hate
you're
this
in your
guy.
new.
I don't use that word lightly. I hate Christopher Wray. So I'll just go through some of his greatest hits. Illegal raid on Mar-a-Lago with deadly force authorized. That was similar to, that's like the Attorney General before.
Mhm.
This guy actually, was, the FBI did this. FBI internal memos targeting Catholics, again, as violent extremists. Pre-dawn raid on House of Pro-Life activists, like in Pennsylvania. And again, the collusion with the national school boards to label concerned parents as domestic terrorists. To me, you got to get rid of this guy. These are the people who pay his salary, and that's how he responds to them. This guy has got to go. He's a threat to Christians. He's got an anti-Christian bias, and I don't want the FBI having these ideas and intimidating Christians and conservatives from participating in the public process,
Absolutely.
the policy and voting and all this sort of stuff.
Exactly. Yep. Well said.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kash Patel, in contrast, so this guy was senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council. He was senior advisor to the acting director of national intelligence, chief of staff to the acting United States Secretary of Defense. He's got an amazing record. He was one of the leading Republicans who actually opposed the investigation into Trump and the whole, Russia collusion nonsense from 2016. He has a long record of opposing government surveillance of people, who, just because of their political differences. He has actually written about the need to dismantle the Department of Justice and to overhaul all of the intelligence agencies, including the FBI. He is not only opposed to prosecuting people just for political gain or beliefs, but he actually believes in prosecuting anyone who has abused their authority for political gain. So,
A+ for me. Not sure if he's going to get through, but that's only going to be because people are terrified of him. Kind of similar to the way that they view Hegseth or some of these other guys. But
yeah, A+ for me as well. I pray he gets through.
Yeah, me as well. One of the reasons that I really like him is because the ACLU doesn't.
Yep.
And so, anytime the ACLU doesn't like somebody, it's kind of a feather in their cap to me. He just to piggyback off of everything you said, I think he will go in with a sledgehammer, much like Pete Hegseth, which we'll get to in a little bit. He'll go in with a sledgehammer and he will dismantle the politicization. Did I say that word right? I'm just going to pretend I did. Of the FBI, which is what it needs. This is an institution that has been rotting for decades, and it needs to be reinvigorated with competency and moral clarity. And I think he'll bring that.
Yep.
What was the other one you wanted to?
Jay Bhattacharya.
Yes.
For NIH director. So
let me say something about his predecessor.
I
hate this guy too.
I was going to say.
I was going to say this guy, preemptive pardon.
So this is, I think isn't the NIH director Francis Collins?
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this guy is famous in circles of intelligent design. Even Guillermo Gonzalez wrote an article talking about him. Saying I don't like him. He purports to be an evangelical Christian, but actually he's a very un-Christian in terms of his stances on LGBT in the NIH, as well as his anti-life stances. So here are some of his greatest hits. So the House of Representatives Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic Report. This was a report that was done about how we handled that particular crisis. I'll try not to mention it too much so that we don't get demonetized. But the NIH funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Health officials falsely characterized the lab leak theory, which is now the dominant accepted theory by several federal departments, as a conspiracy theory. They sought to cover up, people who are trying to truth tell about this, such as the nominee that Trump picked. There were, those school closures had long-term adverse impacts on children. And this report also said that lockdowns in U.S. cities were worse than the disease. And you can kind of compare with countries like Sweden. I think it's Sweden that didn't do all of these restrictions, and they came out with better results than us. So bad guy. And you could pick a doorstop, a brick, and get a better job than Francis Collins. But I don't know.
This guy was silencing. This guy was silencing proponents of intelligent design.
Yeah, he's the theistic evolutionist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And not even open to debate. It was, so
Yeah.
I mean, we differ with lots of our colleagues on different
Hmm.
issues regarding
Mhm.
how and when things began, but you
Hmm.
you don't just completely silence and shut down anyone who disagrees with you using
Yeah.
the power that you've been given. He's also overseen some absolute horrific um, uh, experiments on human embryos and
Mhm.
and aborted babies just before birth and things like that.
Hmm.
The guy's a disaster.
Yeah, and he worked hand in glove with Fauci,
Yeah.
Right,
Dr. Anthony
exactly.
Fauci, basically handed over the reins to the entire COVID operation to
Mhm.
Fauci, who, if you look at Fauci's history as well, was horrible on AIDS, was
Hmm.
Yep,
was horrible on everything. Hasn't been
everything.
right. It's like if you want to make a living being incompetent, go into government work,
Yep,
um,
exactly.
because that's what Dr. Fauci did. I do think Francis Collins, though, I think he retired in like 2021 or 2022. So I think it's
Yes.
I don't know I don't know anything about her, but I think it's some other person is the
Oh,
NIH
I'm
director
sorry.
now. No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so someone, I don't know who it's been, but it hasn't been that long. Maybe, yeah, but yeah, someone, some,
Yeah.
do you know
I
anything
only
about?
remember because I rejoiced when he retired.
Yes, yes. I think we
Oh,
But
all
I'm
did.
sorry.
but I
You're
think
right.
yeah, I think Bhattacharya is a literal Trump slap in the face to Fauci and Collins.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
because he
Yes.
was the guy that was saying, "Guys, you're getting it wrong."
Yep.
Like he was actually telling the truth and being silenced for it. And
Yeah.
it seems like Trump, which I have a lot of issues with the way Trump handled COVID in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, me too.
He wasn't strong enough. Now I give a little bit of grace because you don't know what you're doing. You're trying to
Right.
seed. You're trying to delegate authority to people who
Mhm.
you assume know what they're talking about because they're experts, and then you
Right.
end up realizing they've completely snowed you under and are just doing a power grab.
Yeah.
So I think this is him
Mhm.
saying, I recognize, Donald Trump will never apologize for anything in his life. We know that. But this is basically, to me, this is basically an apology to,
Yeah.
to say,
Right.
I
Right.
should have listened to this guy.
Exactly.
I want this guy here. So if another COVID hits, then I know who I can trust.
Yep.
I think that's what this pick is.
Yeah, and much like being hated by the LCU is a badge of honor. This guy was censored by Twitter pre Elon days, and so that's a badge for him.
Yeah.
But he's a professor of medicine and economics and health research policy at Stanford. So he's got
Wow.
bachelor's and master's in economics. He's an MD. He's got a PhD in economics as well. This is all from Stanford. This he does also have competency
Mm.
and years of experience to prove it. So I like this guy. I'm optimistic. I'll give him an A.
Mhm.
Uh,
He's outspoken on social media. I have a quick joke story. So I don't get along that well with my doctor, and because we fight about things. And he said, "You're getting your opinions on masking and stuff from social media. I'm getting it from evidence." And I'm like, "Guess
Uh-oh.
what, doc? Next time I go in to see him, guess what? The guy I follow on social media is going to be the NIH director."
that's right. So now your doctor is going to be the one who's
That's
going to have to
brilliant.
look for like what's it called, Blue Edge or Blue
Yeah.
Star social media or whatever to find
Yeah.
his own opinions, and the
What did
guy
he
in power is
what did your doctor say when the CDC basically admitted to making up the 6 feet rule and making like,
He actually lost his temper with me.
oh wow.
I assure you, I was just asking questions and saying, how can I, I was asking him questions about some of these things and whether he was going to be able to protect me from mistakes that were being made by the CDC, and he lost his temper, and
Wow.
so it's kind of good in a way because now I really want to be super healthy in order to kind of throw that in his face. So
There you go. Grievance is not always bad. No.
not at all, not at all. He's like my enemy now. Yeah, kind of like my rival. I have to eat
Yeah.
super well, and I've completely redone my exercise and diet to do this, just so I can show him that I'm not some crazy social media follower.
There you go. There you go.
But you are a crazy social media person.
Oh, only for Jay Badakari. Yeah.
There you go. That's right. That's right.
I
We
feel
all are to
vindicated.
some degree or another. That's good.
Oh, that's great.
Good. So I agree too. And I actually do think he'll get. I think he'll get through.
Hope so.
It's hard to argue with his credentials. It really is, and it's also hard to argue with the fact that he was right about everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he can just whatever attack line. Well, during COVID, you say, oh yeah, well, what does the information say now? Like to me, that's the whole. I think people on the committee don't want to be exposed for their bad COVID takes, and he can expose them. So I think he'll get confirmed. Should we move to Pete Hegseth?
Sounds good.
Should we do that? Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
Wintery, do you want to talk about his predecessor or not? You've been the predecessor basher, so I don't want to jump over it.
I was just reading about. Is that Millie?
Yeah.
I didn't prepare anything for him, but I was just reading about him today. Didn't he get pardoned?
Yes. Preemptively pardoned. He hasn't even been charged with anything.
Yeah, a bunch of people preemptively pardoned.
A whole bunch of people. And a lot of their names, coincidentally, are Biden in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big things I can think about for him, and you guys feel free to jump in, but I just think that the withdrawal from Afghanistan, was terrible. And I'm not sure how much he had to do with that. I would think he had to do something. And just in general, the DEI in the armed forces drives me nuts. All I do is read military history. For every Christian book I read 2 military histories. So you couldn't find a person who is more interested in reading about the adventures and heroic actions of particularly American military history, American military in history. And it just destroys me that we no longer attract that kind of person who has excellent character, is a great leader, and distinguishes himself on the battlefield. Instead, we have people like this guy who their whole people like him. The Navy guy. I think I'm going to forget the guy's name, but the trans guy. It's just it make us look good, inspire courage and trust in our allies, make us show us off well to people who are about to start a war, and they go, oh no, the Americans don't want us to be fighting like this. Let's try to negotiate because they got a couple aircraft carriers parked in the harbor outside. We better just get along, So I'm really disappointed, but maybe you guys have more details about him than I do.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think to me, the number one memory I have is when he talked about white rage in a congressional hearing. And he was curious about it, like having to deal with white rage in the military. And I'm like, way to disenfranchise a bunch. I don't know what the military demographics are, but you talk about having an issue as far as retention and recruitment. Having somebody as a leader like that, and then to see 13 Marines die because of your incompetence, 100%. It's on the SecDef 100% to be able to, and on the president to be able to operate well in a way that doesn't put your people in harm's way. And he did the opposite of what a normal person would do, and instituted DEI in so many areas, which is like the worst place. DEI is bad everywhere, but the worst place for it to be implemented is in our armed forces. It will cripple and destroy our readiness and our lethality. And that is the point of the armed forces.
The jab mandates got rid of a lot of good people as well. I hope they sue, to get reinstated. The mandatory injection.
Yep. Well, Trump said yesterday that he is reinstating all of the military who were kicked out because of that issue and giving them back pay for the entire time since they've been kicked out.
Yeah.
So that was good news. Yeah. So, so I guess as far as Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, I like Pete. Now he has a checkered past. morally speaking. He's been married 3 times.
Mhm.
He's had multiple affairs. Now he says he's a Christian. He actually said it multiple times in his hearing. He said, "But by the grace of Jesus and Jenny." Jenny is his current wife. So he claims a Christian conversion in high school, but then in some interviews that I saw, because I tried to go down the rabbit hole and being like, okay, he claims he's changed. What was the change? Like, morally speaking, what was the change? Not because I think that would necessarily impact what he was going to do, but because I was curious as somebody who claims to be a believer, like, okay, what are the fruits that are being borne out?
Great
And
question.
in multiple interviews, he mentioned a decade ago, something happened, and he's not very clear on it. So, if I were to be a guessing person, I would guess that he had some sort of thing that happened. Maybe it was this woman who claimed that he assaulted her, and then the cops ended up dropping the charges because she was clearly the aggressor in their eyes, and they're still trying to use this against him. Maybe it was that incident that made him have a literal come to Jesus moment. But it seems like he's been nothing but exemplary for years at Fox and in other places. He had a lot of people come to his character defense in the hearing, and so that was good. He said multiple times, "All glory belongs to Jesus Christ," which was awesome to hear in a hearing. Uh, uh, so I like all that. There's an interview on Megyn Kelly that he did about his change in past that people can look up. If you look up Pete Hegseth, Megyn Kelly, there's an interview there that's very kind of enlightening. He admits that he did some horrible things and that Jesus has changed him. So it's a really cool story. But he's been in the armed forces. And not only has he been in the armed forces, he's been in the non-political side of the armed forces. He's been on the ground in the infantry with his fellow brothers in arms, fighting alongside them. And I've never been in the military, but I've talked to people in the military, and there is a clear difference between kind of the officer class and the infantry class, and it has only grown in the time that. The armed forces has become more and more politicized. And so the fact that Pete Hegseth is the pick, to me, shows a desire to shrink that gap between the men and women serving and to depoliticize the Secretary of Defense, which is huge. He had a great quote in his hearing where he said, "We won the World War II with 7 4-star generals. Now we have 44 4-star generals, and we can't even pull out of Afghanistan correctly."
Yeah.
And so maybe having this huge political class isn't great for our armed forces and our military readiness. I like everything about what he projected. Obviously, he's great on TV. So aside from some of those moral qualms I'm not entirely sure about right now, but I got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Given some of his interviews that a decade ago something happened and changed his life, I actually think that this is the perfect position to put someone into Secretary of Defense, because he can go in and just with a hacksaw just start hacking off the dead branches. So I'd probably give this a B+. That's what I would give it.
B from me. He did write a book about, these issues that you're talking about. So he has some ideas about what he'd like to do. And we kind of know from that.
Yeah. My first, I guess, introduction to who he was I saw him on Fox News. It had I think he was filling in for Jesse Waters. I think that was the situation, and this guy comes on, I've never seen before, and not that I'm all that familiar, but anyway, he just starts talking about how the biggest problem America has is having abandoned the Christian faith. And he was very passionate about it. He was very outspoken about it. He was very direct. It seemed very unlike anything I'd ever seen on television, even on Fox News, and very obviously well-spoken. And I was like, wow, who is this guy? And I also saw a 15-minute talk he gave not too long ago, I think, at the Heritage Foundation's 50th anniversary conference. And he was talking about education, and he was very knowledgeable about the education system in our country and what had gone wrong with it. And I mean, I thought the speech was absolutely phenomenal in its content as well as its delivery. And I think, and then I saw his Senate hearing, and he was brilliant at times. Didn't let the senators get to him. He really just came out. It was just phenomenal. Really excellent answers. I've heard other commentators say he really set the tone for these hearings to be a massive success. Just did a phenomenal job. And so, yeah, I don't know all the details about his past, like you said, but I know that he has put his job and his reputation on the line to do specials on, like, he took his pastor to Israel and talked about, went to all the places where significant events happened in Jesus' life. And he didn't talk about how the psychology of a Christian worldview is beneficial for the modern mind or anything like that. He was like, this is where Jesus was probably raised.
Yeah.
Raised here. That's why we live. That's why we have hope. That's why we have eternity. That's why we're forgiven. And I mean, whatever's gone on in the past, he seems really on fire for truth, for God, for goodness and excellence, and good decision making now. So I'm going to go with probably a B as well. I don't, because I guess I don't know enough to know what has happened.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think we're all in about the same sphere there. The only reason I don't give an A is because I don't know, because of his lack of experience in the political, as far as the armed forces goes. I don't know how well he's going to be able to go in and actually hack things away like he says he is going to. So I think he might be overpromising some things.
Yes.
But all that said, I think he's a solid pick, and it's frankly great to hear somebody talk about Jesus the way that he does, whether he's sincere or not. He's talking about it in a sincere way. He seems sincere to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's all I can go off of. And then the last thing on him is, I would say anybody who engenders the amount of hatred he has for a simple tattoo on his chest called the Jerusalem cross, constant claims that he's a white supremacist, all those things, you're automatically going to get some of my support, because it's absolutely ridiculous and evil what they do to people. So I feel for him and for his wife having to go through that. And I think he said, I understood that was going to happen, but I realized that I'm a proxy for everybody else that believes like I do, so I'm willing to take it. And it's like, okay, that's a man.
Yes.
Like, that's masculinity. That's a man standing in the gap. And so doing that and being the Secretary of Defense go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, that's exactly right. I think there's no way, I don't know how well his background is suited to this exact position. But there's no way. He has so much courage, and he has taken so much risk to passionately speak truth and take the hits from the left, that I don't think I could give him lower than a B, just on that basis. He is standing up and saying, we're going to get this done. This is important, and bring it on. There was so much pressure on him to step down, to step away. The way that I've already forgotten his name. What's the name of the guy who did step down?
Millie.
No.
The guy who was
the
nominated,
congressman.
the congressman.
Who's
Anyway,
Oh,
Going to be
Matt
in a
Getz.
yes.
yes, yes,
Sorry, I'm
Gates,
sorry.
Matt
No,
Gates.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
fine. I couldn't think of his
No,
name
I
either.
couldn't think
Which is
but
probably good. I've wiped it from my mind.
right, yeah,
Yeah,
same
he
here,
was
same here.
not good.
And that, yeah, I was happy for him to step down, but Hegseth had the same type of pressure on him, and from what I could tell, and he said, "Nope, I'm here for it. Let's do this."
Yeah, and the same type of pressure with much less real baggage. Like
Right, exactly.
like
Right,
Getz has got his own issues
Yeah.
that he's going to have to
definitely.
maybe litigate and figure out, and
Right.
Yeah.
some disgusting things there.
Yeah.
So what are our thoughts on Hegseth getting through this one? I'm not sure about.
Yeah,
I hope he
agree.
does, but I'm not sure.
I think he's going to get through on party lines.
It's probably like 51, 52, 48 or something like that.
I think so. That's my
Yeah.
guess.
I'm doubtful. I think that there are a few hawkish people in the Senate, like Lindsey Graham, who may not vote for him.
There was one woman who said she was definitely not sold on him, and after his Senate hearing, she said, "Never mind, I'm on board."
Joni Ernst.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
She's pretty moderate, so that's a good sign. I
That
would
was a
have
good
picked her
sign.
as another no vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most he'll get is 51. But if he gets 50, he'll be in. So, but I would say I'm like 60% on him getting in. I'm still not sure. I hope he does, because I think he'll actually do a good job. I don't know who. It's always like, well, who else is he going to pick? The problem, if he doesn't get in, is I'm afraid I'm a little bit concerned about Trump's ability to pick somebody with a similar Christian pedigree to be in that position, frankly. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Should we turn to? How about let's go to RFK Jr. Let's do that one. Secretary of Health and Human Services. This one, I remember when RFK Jr. endorsed Trump. I thought it was good for Trump, and I thought it was bad for conservatism.
Yes.
And the reason why is because RFK Jr. is not conservative by any stretch of the imagination. He's as
Right.
pro-choice as pro-choice can get, which, being a part of the Department of Health and Human Services, should be concerning to us as Christians. And he's a little bit wacky in a lot of ways, like many Kennedys are. And his positions on vaccines. Now, his position on the COVID vaccine, I 100% agree with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
But he said some weird things about the polio vaccine in the past,
Yeah.
that he's kind of walked back now. I just don't know if I can trust him. Like, even if he says, "Oh no," because he said, "Oh, I'll do pro-life policies, I promise," when he gets into the DHHS, and I don't know if I can trust him.
This is an important pick, director of HHS. So.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of got the impression that it was one of the deals that Trump made when he thought, he may not win the presidency at all, and so he negotiated with RFK, and RFK threw his support behind Trump, and then it turned out not to have actually been as close of an election as we all thought that it might be, and as the pollsters were predicting, and yet then now we're kind of stuck with RFK here, and I'm not a fan, but
I give him a D, and I will say this: we haven't talked about this guy, the Marty McCary, the FDA commissioner.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say a couple quick things to show you the difference between a D and an A. Professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, hundreds of scientific articles, several books on healthcare, outspoken critic of Biden COVID policies, including the COVID vaccine. Opposed to overprescription of drugs, opposed to pesticides in foods, opposed to pharma companies and insurance companies influencing doctors and federal agencies. That's an A or an A plus pick. He's got a long-standing track record of the kinds of things that Kennedy is talking about, but he actually has the education, the work experience, and the headbutting experience, standing up and speaking out about these things. So I don't like Kennedy, and I hope he doesn't get through. I would love to see Ben Carson or someone like that, in there as HHS director. But
this is the one I'm probably least confident we'll get through because a lot of Dems don't like him and a lot of Republicans don't like him. So he's kind of in a difficult spot because he needs to kind of try to really perfectly hit the lane, right?
Right.
Ride the line.
Yeah.
I agree, Rose, that it was definitely a deal that Trump made. And the good thing is you see Trump follow through in his promises. I don't like that he made the promise, but I think once you do, you've got to follow through, right? And so
Yep.
I think that signals to the voter that Trump is a man of his word because he did give RFK Jr. his word. And I see RFK Jr.'s pick as for Trump. I don't know that Trump cares one way or the other if RFK Jr. gets confirmed, frankly. And I think he's probably got someone else waiting in the wings. If that, like, I think he's got
I
his
hope so.
actual choice, and then he has the promised choice of RFK Jr. At least that's the optimistic side of me. And there are some things that are good about RFK Jr. I think he is right that we have a health issue in our country. I think he's right that we tend to major on ridiculous things rather than just the pragmatic health of our food and water and things like that. I think he's right that our fat positivity movement is a detriment to everything that is objectively true about health. So there are things that he gets right. So I don't want people to think that but I think the most important things he's wishy-washy on or completely wrong on, like abortion for sure.
Yeah.
And then the vaccine thing, I just get concerned because there are vaccines where I go, I don't want that mandated. Then there are others that I do think are positives that I'm not Joe Rogan-esque on. That I think, like the polio vaccine it was an awesome innovation. So if he walks those things back, I just don't know if I can trust him. So I would I'd probably give it a D as well. Not the worst pick, but definitely, and I think he's 50-50 in my mind, whether or not he'll get through.
I'm just thinking about how where and when are we living when you have to say, well, it's really cool that the nominee for Director of Health and Human Services thinks that the fat positivity movement is not healthy. No
It's
kidding.
an unfortunate reality.
Oh goodness. But yeah, I do think like you both I think have said, it depends on how trustworthy he is. Trump has kept his word. Will RFK Jr. keep his word? Because he has said that he will he'll legislate as a pro-life person because that's part of the promise he's made. He's not going to try to get rid of the polio vaccine, he said. So things like that. I think that he will probably keep his word. I think, Trump's not afraid to fire people if he gets out of line. And so I don't think this is disastrous, but he wouldn't have been in the top several hundred in my list. So yeah. I'm glad that Kamala Harris is not president. I'll just say that.
Yes.
If this is what it took, great.
So, Josh, I have one pick that I'm looking at that I really want to say something about, and I don't know, is it okay for me to talk about Harmeet K. Dillon? This is one that's probably flying under everybody's radar, but I love this woman. She is the person that I would hire if I ever got in trouble, under my real name. This is the one person I would go and I'd say, you're hired, defend me. So she is replacing Kristen Clark, who is a hyper-politicized SPLC type person who is, this is for the Assistant Attorney General of Civil Rights. And Kristen Clark is all over the place on Daily Signal and Daily Wire and these places being written up for targeting pro-lifers for prosecution. She's on social media saying that people who protested Fauci should be barred from treatment at public hospitals and denied coverage by their insurance. So this is a real left-wing hack. That I don't know how this person got in, to this position. But Harmeet has been nominated to replace her. So listen to these achievements. represented pro-life journalist David Daleiden, who exposed Planned Parenthood for selling aborted baby parts. Represented Google senior software engineer James Damore, who sued Google after it terminated him following his exposure of their anti-conservative bias. Sued Rose City Antifa on behalf of journalist Andy NGO, after No suffered injuries in an assault in Portland, Oregon. Filed more than a dozen lawsuits against pandemic orders in California, representing pastors, businesses, and citizens. She's spoken up positively for detransitioners. So this is a 180. And Harmeet, as you can tell from her name, is born in India, and she's a Sikh. So whenever we're looking, like I'm not white, and whenever we're looking to improve our diversity, it really makes me happy when we go after people like Kash Patel and Harmeet Dillon. It's like, go and get the people who are lions, on behalf of conservatism. And so this is one of the picks. I give an A++. I don't think that's legal, but I like to go from where we were to where she would take us would be fantastic for America and for Christians, I think, in particular.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Thanks for bringing her up. No, I agree. And with your comment on diversity, this is where like the DEI thing is like, well, we want diversity for the sake of diversity, and for us, we go, no, we're fine with all sorts of skin colors and nationalities, whatever, but they need to be competent and really good at their jobs.
Yeah.
Like they need to beat, like on merit, beat somebody out for that position. So 100%. One of the things with her, this is an interesting anecdote that I read online, is that when she was at Dartmouth College, she wrote an article against the president while she was at Dartmouth College.
Yeah.
She wrote an article against the president of Dartmouth because of his hatred of conservatives. So
Nice.
Steel spine.
yeah, so she is not going to back down 100%.
Yep.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've got like 3 or 4 more names to do. Thank you for hanging in with us here, and we just really hope that this has been helpful for people. The next one on my list, and then we'll get to some of the other ones towards the end here, is the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, famously from Hawaii, famously ended Kamala Harris's presidential run at a debate in 2020 when she just kind of railroaded her over all of her failures. This is an interesting one for me because I actually like Tulsi. Like, I like her personality, but she's not a conservative.
Right.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
the fact that she's officially switched to a Republican, well, that's fine, but you're not like, you got to switch your policies too. And I don't know how much she has.
Yeah.
This one's interesting to me because she has a mixed bag in the intelligence world to me. Like she opposed Section 702 of FISA, which was basically using third-party sources on the internet to spy on our adversaries. She said we shouldn't be able to do that. Now she's kind of reversed that, probably to garner some of the conservative votes. She soft-pedaled Assad, the Assad regime.
Yep.
But then she also called Assad a terrorist as well. So she's kind of a mixed bag to me. So I don't know what to think of it. But the positives to me for her is she is very, very good on Islamic extremism. Very good. She is 100% not held back on that issue. But she has made some, again, she has made some weird comments, especially with the Ukraine war, talking about the spirit of aloha and just wanting to, like, so to me, I just don't know how to feel about this one. She's been in the armed forces. She understands the intelligence committee. I don't know how, and maybe she's been steeled because of how much she's been excoriated by the Democratic Party. And maybe she doesn't care what people think about her anymore. But it seemed like she was easy to fold under pressure. And I don't think we'd want someone like that in national intelligence. What do you guys think? That's kind of where I kind of landed with her. I'm just not sure what to do with it.
Well, she opposed ending the Iran nuclear deal and opposed sanctions on Iran. So yeah. And, I'm not a big fan. I actually, at one point I put on social media, I know that, told that men love her, and it's not a coincidence that she's beautiful and she has an attractive personality and she's well spoken. But why else do you like her? Is there anything policy related that you all like about her? And I didn't get a whole lot back from people, except a lot of men replying, "Why are you picking on Tulsi? I love Tulsi.
I
She's
really hate that. I hate simping. I hate simping, and I hate when men abdicate their duty to lead because of a woman's attractiveness or promises of favors. So no, I don't like this pick. She has no experience, and she was a Democrat till 2022. And yeah, I know what you said about being good on Islam, but in terms of policy, she wasn't good on Iran.
Yep.
So I don't see why. Go ahead.
She seems to think that radical Islam is not found in the governments of the majority Islamic countries. That it's because she's against radical Islam. She's very outspoken against that, but then she soft pedals the regimes of those countries as if they can make a change in radical Islam as if they're not radical themselves. So,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
That's just
No,
plain
I'm done.
wrong. I mean, they are those radical Islam thrives in those countries because the rulers allow it to, because they are Muslims who follow the Quran too. Mm-hmm. So Islam and the leaders of the Muslim leaders of those countries are the problem, and we need policies that reflect that.
I don't know how to grade this one. She doesn't have what I want politically or in terms of experience. So is this an F or a D? I don't know, or a C minus. Let's say a D.
Yeah,
but she's cute. She's cute.
No.
It's that one gray hair that's totally not planned. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm like, it's like me trying to be optimistic because I am such a fan of Trump's foreign policy and his ability to discern intelligence matters. That wants to give me the benefit of the doubt in this situation. But then I look at just the resume, and you need somebody that's unequivocal in this position, and she seems to equivocate an awful lot. And so for me, I'm like, it's either a C minus or a D. And the issue is she's going to get confirmed. I mean, it's not like Robert F. Kennedy, where I think there's a 50-50 shot he might not be. I think she's pretty much going to be in because she hits the middle for everybody, and nobody's going to fight. I could see her getting the same treatment as Marco Rubio, but it's a worse. It's a worse majority or uncontested pick because I just don't. Maybe she's wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see her being a good pick.
Yeah, agree.
Same here.
I like Victoria Coates, veteran national security person under Trump, who's working at Heritage. So if it's me and he has to pull the pick for any reason and picks Victoria, you heard it here first.
Okay, all right. We'll clip this if this happens, and we'll put it all over and say Wintery Night was all over it.
That's it.
Yeah.
She's good.
Yep, this one seems like another promise to me. Hey, if you pull out, I'll find a place for you.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sit well. Hopefully, and maybe she won't serve in the position very long. She'll go do something else. I don't know. But Wintery, I know you had a few other ones that you wanted to talk about.
All right. So one of the picks that I just noticed on X/Twitter yesterday that's getting some scrutiny from people I trust is Penny Schwinn, who is she was very high up in Tennessee's Department of Education. So she's done everything that we don't like in the Department of Education. Embraced DEI and hiring teachers. She wanted schools to be able to do wellness checks on kids by going into parents' homes. She supported masking for children, and she supported critical race theory and explicit graphic books in the library, if you know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
So this was brought to my attention by Moms for Liberty of Williamson County, which is just outside Nashville, and Robbie Starbuck, who's like an anti-DEI wrecking machine. He gets all the corporations to get rid of their DEI. So I would say Penny Schwinn at Deputy Secretary of Education. This is an F, and I want the pick pulled, and I want somebody who is much, much better. How about one of the Moms for Liberty
Yes.
women
Yep.
would be great, or a state secretary of education who's done something, good for school choice, like the Oklahoma one,
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
Florida.
let's give them a real cush job and say, you can come in, we'll pay you. All you have to do is nothing. Like you
Yeah.
just
That's right.
sit in your office. We can't close it down right now because we need certain approvals of. But we want to close down the Department of Education. What we need you guys to do is come in and effectively run it as a closed department. That's
That works.
that would be my dream.
Or get the signatures and close it.
Yes.
Who can close it? That's who we want.
Yeah.
Yes. Who your entire job will be convincing legislators to close the Department of Education.
Yeah.
To eliminate your job. So
Any theories as to how this woman was nominated?
She's
what
very
is-
pretty.
Oh my goodness.
She's very pretty, just like Tulsi
Disaster.
Gabbard and Christy Nome.
Disaster.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled with any of those.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of Christy Nome because I really think that, she's going to take care of the rogue dog situation we have that is threatening this country. And so, not a fan of hers either, actually.
Christy Nome, I'm not sure about. She's another one that was wishy-washy on some social issues in South Dakota.
Yeah.
I
She
don't
killed
know.
the transgender bill that was excellent.
In a state where there was no reason to do it.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Except for she wanted to run for president. I think that's the only reason. It was a political. Well,
And if that's indicative of what kind of president she would be, then
exactly.
down with that as well. No, thank you. And what a horrible move, because by the time she'll ever be in a position to run, I really think this whole transgender issue is going to be probably largely put to rest. The studies that have been coming out of the last few years, and now that more and more people are seeing as a result of freedom of speech being reinstated in this country, and the results that are coming out of Europe are all showing that transgender surgeries and chemicals and all this, they do not reduce the rate of suicide in people. They, in fact, about 10 years after transition is the highest, most likely time for people to try to take their own lives. And now with all these detransitioners coming out and saying, as soon as I expressed some anxiety, said I was uncomfortable with myself, which what middle schooler isn't uncomfortable with themselves, they immediately said, we have to transition you right now. And it's just that it's been a disaster. I think that, but at the time that she vetoed that bill, it was huge. That was at the height of the trans success, I guess you would say, for the left. And it just really calls into question for me whether she's someone who can be bought or what the heck was going on with that, because there's no good reason for her to have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you saw any of her hearing.
I've seen some clips, and it does sound like she actually did. I mean, I'd love to hear I've heard that she did a pretty good job.
She did well. She pivoted to immigration a lot, Department of Homeland Security. So she had really good answers on immigration.
Nice.
She was for FEMA and aid and stuff. She was very specific about how politics should never get involved in that. We're just going to do what we need to do by the law. So to me, she's just an average pick. Like, I think she's like a C.
Yeah.
I think she'll probably do a fine job. She'll do better than what we've had.
Yeah.
Because what we had was an F minus.
Right.
if it's that was Mayorkas, right? That's
Yeah.
at the Homeland Security guy, and almost got impeached. So, like,
And should have been. Yeah.
yes, yes. So if you're measuring it against what we have,
That's a
she's
good
an
point.
A. If you're measuring it over the ideal, she's a C.
Yeah. And admittedly, I mean, the trans issue is irrelevant to Homeland Security.
Yeah.
But
you wonder, like, to me, can people pull at her heartstrings for dreamers
that
or
was
for
Yeah.
yes, that's the issue.
that stuff?
Right.
So I'm 100% with you. Like, okay, how easy are you to manipulate?
Right.
Because it seemed like you were easy to manipulate in South Dakota with the trans issue.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. She did a good job of being opposed to the government mandates regarding the COVID pandemic. But when you live in a state with 12 people, you should be opposed to closing down everything.
Yes. That's
yeah.
fair.
I'd say I don't know. I think I'm going with below average. Something just seems really off to me about her, but yeah. Again, compared to Mayorkas, amazing, wonderful.
Yes. All right. Is there anyone else we wanted to talk about before we close this? Any other names?
Some people are pushing back against Surgeon General nominee Jeanette Nishiwat. She has good qualifications. She's a medical director of a big urgent care system, but she just wasn't very good on mask mandates and COVID vaccine mandates. So some people are pushing back on social media, and I'm not excited about Mehmet Oz as Medicare and Medicaid administrator. He's just some guy on Fox News who made a lot of donations to Democrats. So I don't. To me, he's like another Kennedy pick. What are you doing there? We could have done so much better,
For me, I think the last one I would talk about maybe is Elise Stefanik.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
For ambassador to the UN. I actually like this pick.
Oh, interesting.
Because she. I like it in as much as we have to deal with the UN, frankly. But I kind of like this pick because she, again, has been very, very outspoken on an America First UN policy and on Israel's biblical right to the land of Israel. And to me, that stands in direct opposition to the worst vestiges of the UN, which is like the UN Security Council and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If she's able to stand up to the UN Security Council, so it's a lot like what was her name? The first Trump term.
I want to say Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley.
Yeah. Nikki Haley. I don't like Nikki Haley in a lot of ways, but she was actually a really good ambassador to the UN. And I think Elise Stefanik is similar. What do you guys think? That's kind of where I land on it. I'm willing to be convinced differently.
Her left-wing social views are not going to be a problem as much there. So I'm okay with it. She does have some grit. Like she's got some fight in her, and I like that.
And you need that in the UN. Like you need that. One of my favorite things was in the congressional hearings where she with the college presidents. She absolutely destroyed them in anti-Semitism and what was going on. It ended one of the college presidents' careers, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
She ended up having to resign.
Yes.
So if that is the Elise Stefanik we're getting at the UN, I think it's good.
Yep.
Yeah. That was phenomenal. Yeah. She'd ask the question and then the Harvard and other women would answer and she'd be like, wrong answer. Let me give you another try. It was hilarious.
It was great. For those watching, check out the video. Elise Stefanik grills. I think it was like Columbia and Harvard
and one other school. And exactly. That was great. I was going to say the same about Love Her Grit. I think she could do a really good job in this role. The things I don't like about her positions seem largely irrelevant for this role. And that it's probably a good parallel to Nikki Haley. Like you said, I really, really did not want Nikki Haley as president when she was running for president. I was very happy when she dropped out, and even before that, when it became clear she wasn't going to win. But I do think she did a good job at the UN. So, and from the clips that I've seen, it looks like Stefanik did a good job with her hearing, and she's tough. She can be tough. So as long as she's in the right position, and I think she may be here. So with this UN position. So
yeah. So kind of a mixed bag. All of the picks, but more good than not, I think. What do you guys think?
Yep.
Yeah, more good than not. And I would say, again, especially when contrasting Trump's picks with the predecessors who have been an absolute and complete disaster. Very few qualifications to even be in those positions. A lot of them hired for their gender and their sexual deviancy, their skin color, things that just, either don't matter or should perhaps even at times be disqualifications. So I'm, in contrast to that, I am optimistic about the next 4 years. I'm not an optimist by nature, so I'm also very skeptical that much of what's been promised will get done. But I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. I love the enthusiasm that has come with the second Trump presidency. People people who have been kind of the enemy of free speech, like Mark Zuckerberg and people like that, are now coming out and supporting Trump. And I definitely feel what Trump said in his speech about Happy Liberation Day. That I feel like we've been in bondage to the Biden administration and its horrible, horrible policies that are anti-Christian, anti-free speech, anti-American, anti-constitution, anti-democracy, while simultaneously making all these claims to be, pro-democracy and pro-awesomeness, and calling Trump a threat to democracy and all of that. It's a new day, and I am excited for the first time in a long time about about the possibilities.
Yeah, I would echo that, and having no Rachel Levine as in our health department shows a return to sanity. It's like make America great again, or is it just make America competent again? Like it's just there's a level of competency that's just relieving to see. It's like, okay, there are still adults that are willing to do these jobs, and it's good. Any closing remarks from you, Wintery?
No, we really enjoyed coming on. I really enjoyed coming on the show. I'm sure Rose did as well. And
Absolutely.
We really appreciate all the effort that you've put in to be able to have, extra to add to all of these picks. I would just say to Christians who are listening, what I kind of like to see is less cynicism about policy and politics. If you're at all a conspiracy theory type person who's very cynical and thinks both parties are the same, I think that just melts away. If when you get to the level of knowledge that Josh has, say, and you have your favorites, and you have people that are good for your worldview, and they're going to help you to run your life. And then on the other side, you have people that are maybe very attractive, and you like them, but they're just not going to be good for your worldview, and they're not going to be good for your life. So I think the more putting in the time is going to help you to be more informed, and I think appropriately passionate for the right reasons. And who knows, maybe you'll pick up and move out of a blue state to a red state because you just like, Ron DeSantis or, one of these other states, and maybe you'll move to a different city, and maybe you'll you'll let it affect you, and you'll be put out an election sign and have good conversations with people. I think we want to get away from that cynicism, and I really do think it comes from not knowing the little distinctions that we're hearing Josh make about all these different people, knowing their past, knowing their policies. The more you know, the more invested you are, and a better of an advocate you can be for pushing for policies and laws and that are consistent with the Christian worldview that help us do our jobs.
I think that's a great place to end it right there. Thank you, Wintry Knight and Desert Rose, for coming on Free Thinking Ministries. We hope that people found this helpful, and go out, pursue Christ, but don't be inactive in the political sphere. That's what the enemy wants. Still be active and learn and grow. And you can actually express happiness over things that are happening politically as well, too. It's okay. And despair in other senses. So, but today it's more happy than despair. So God bless you. Thanks again for coming on, guys. And as we always say here at Free Thinking Ministries, stay reasonable.